Soft jazz fades into tension-filled silence. Paris, 1955. The glittering city of lights hides a shadowy underworld ruled by one man, Dante, Duke Romano. When Southern belle Hattie Montgomery steps off the morning train, ledger books in hand, she thinks she's accepting a simple accounting position. She doesn't realize she's walking into a blood feud that's claimed 12 lives in 3 months. Duke didn't advertise for an accountant. He advertised for a wife. One fateful Christmas Eve, as snow falls on the Seine, Hattie will find herself holding a smoking gun over a dead man's body. The same night, Duke will get down on one knee, not with a diamond ring, but with his family's century-old signet, stained with the blood of his enemies. Their forbidden romance will ignite a gang war that threatens everything Duke has built. As rival American gangster Knox Holloway closes in, Duke must decide, his empire, or the woman who's become his only weakness. She came to balance his books. She'll end up ruling his heart. But in Duke Romano's world, love is the most dangerous liability of all. The real story begins. Paris, December 1955. Frost etched delicate patterns on the windows of Le Rubis, the most exclusive nightclub in the 16th arrondissement, as Dante Duke Romano swirled amber whiskey in a crystal glass. At 32, he'd already built an empire that made the native Parisians both fear and respect him. Tonight, though, he sat alone in his office above the club. The music from below, a muffled reminder of the world he controlled. The photographs spread across his mahogany desk showed his various businesses: the nightclub, 3 restaurants, an art gallery, and a luxury hotel. All legitimate fronts for the real source of his power. Control of Paris's luxury black market, rare wines, exotic silks, jewelry with questionable provenance all passed through Duke's hands before reaching the elite of post-war Europe. Still working, boss? Archer Blackwood appeared in the doorway, his imposing frame filling the space. At 45, Arch had followed Duke from New York to Paris after the war, becoming more father figure than consigliere. Just reviewing our holdings, Duke replied, straightening his immaculate black tie. Even at midnight, his suit remained pristine, control expressed through appearance. The meeting with the Russians went well? They've agreed to our terms for the diamond shipment, Arch confirmed, taking a seat across from Duke. But that's not why I'm here. Duke raised an eyebrow. Few people dared approach him with unsolicited matters. Your father's been gone 3 years tomorrow, Arch said carefully. Salvatore built this organization for family, not just power. He wanted a legacy. I'm well aware of what my father wanted. Duke's voice cooled several degrees. Arch pushed a newspaper toward him. You've been running this advertisement in American papers for 2 months. 7 responses so far, and you've dismissed them all without a meeting. Duke glanced at the carefully worded notice. Financial consultant, sought by international businessman, American educated, fluent French preferred, single female with accounting background, relocation to Paris required, generous compensation. The ad is deliberately vague, Duke countered. Half the respondents were unqualified. And the other half? Arch challenged. The Holloway situation is escalating. Knox has been making moves on our territory since September. An alliance through marriage would strengthen our position. Duke rose, walking to the window that overlooked nighttime Paris. The Eiffel Tower stood illuminated in the distance, a reminder of the city he'd made his own. My father arranged marriages for business. I saw what that did to my mother. Times are different now, Arch said. But our world isn't. You need someone who understands our business, who can move between both worlds, someone who looks legitimate to outsiders. And you think an American accountant fits that bill? Duke's skepticism was evident. The latest applicant might. Arch placed a folder on the desk. Hattie Montgomery, 26. From Georgia, but educated at Radcliffe. Accounting degree. Worked for her family's shipping business. Speaks fluent French, her mother was Parisian. Another society girl looking for European adventure. Duke dismissed. Read her letter, Arch insisted before leaving. Sometimes the right person comes from unexpected places. Your father believed that. Alone again, Duke opened the folder. Inside was a photograph of a woman with honey blonde hair styled in elegant waves, intelligent eyes, and a smile that seemed to hold secrets. Her application letter was written in impeccable French, detailing qualifications but also expressing a passion for Paris that seemed genuine. He closed the folder, an unfamiliar feeling stirring beneath his carefully controlled exterior. 7 years building power in Paris had left little room for personal connections. Women came and went, actresses, singers from his club, but none crossed the boundary into his real life. The telephone's ring interrupted his thoughts. Thatcher here, came the American-accented voice. Holloway's men were spotted near the warehouse on Rue Claire. Nothing happened, but they're sending a message. Increase security at all locations, Duke ordered. And tell Philippe I want updates every 6 hours. After hanging up, Duke returned to the window. Paris spread before him, beautiful and oblivious to the criminal currents that flowed beneath its elegant surface. He'd built a kingdom here, but Salvatore's words echoed in his memory. Power without purpose becomes its own prison, son. The folder still sat open on his desk, Haddon Montgomery's photograph looking up at him. In 3 days, the morning train from London would arrive, bringing this southern stranger to his doorstep. Another complication in an already complicated life. Duke drained his whiskey, made his decision. He would meet her once, satisfy Arch's persistence, then send her back to America with a generous dismissal. His world had no place for outsiders, especially not one whose smile suggested she had secrets of her own. Haddon Montgomery Hattie to friends and family clutched her leather portfolio as the train from London whistled through the French countryside. At 26, she was leaving behind the wreckage of her family's shipping business and reputation in Savannah. Paris represented not just escape, but reinvention. First time in Paris, mademoiselle? An elderly Frenchwoman sitting across from her smiled kindly. First time in 10 years, Hattie replied in the French her mother had insisted she master. My mother was Parisian. She brought me here as a child. Ah, returning to your roots. For pleasure or business? Hattie fingered the telegram in her pocket. A job opportunity. With an international businessman. The woman nodded approvingly. Paris is rebuilding. Good opportunities for those with skills. Skills? Hattie almost laughed. Her accounting degree had failed to save her father's business from collapse, or protect him from the scandal that followed accusations of embezzlement, fraud, and worse. The Montgomery name, once respected throughout Georgia, was now whispered with scorn. Her father's suicide 2 months ago had been the final blow. The advertisement had appeared in the Boston paper where she'd fled after the funeral. Financial consultant sought by international businessman. The credentials matched hers perfectly. The location offered escape. The generous compensation promised a fresh start. What Mr. Romano didn't know, what no one knew, was that Hattie Montgomery had learned more than legitimate accounting at her father's side. She'd also learned how to hide money, disguise transactions, and create financial facades that could withstand scrutiny. Skills that had failed to save her father, but might save her. The train slowed as it approached Paris, the Eiffel Tower appearing on the horizon. Hattie smoothed her tailored navy suit, purchased with the last of her savings. First impressions mattered in business. Her correspondence with Mr. Romano's office had been professional but vague. She knew only that he ran multiple businesses requiring sophisticated financial management. As the train pulled into Gare du Nord, Hattie gathered her luggage, one large suitcase and a smaller vanity case, all that remained of her previous life. The platform bustled with travelers, but a tall man in an immaculate black suit stood apart from the crowd, holding a small sign. Montgomery. Miss Montgomery? He inquired as she approached. I'm Archer Blackwood, Mr. Romano's associate. Welcome to Paris. Thank you for meeting me, Hattie replied, surprised by his American accent. Let me take your luggage. He efficiently guided her through the station to a gleaming black Citroën waiting at the curb. Mr. Romano has arranged accommodations at Hotel Élysée. You'll have today to settle in. Your meeting is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Hattie nodded, taking in the Paris streets as they drove. Post-war reconstruction was evident, but the city's elegance remained undiminished. May I ask what Mr. Romano's business entails? His advertisement was rather non-specific. Archer smiled slightly. Mr. Romano has diverse interests: hospitality, arts, imports. He requires someone who can manage complex financial portfolios with discretion. Discretion. The word hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Hattie had grown up in Savannah society where certain things weren't discussed directly. She recognized the language of secrets. I understand discretion, Mr. Blackwood, she replied carefully. My father's shipping business involved international transactions requiring delicate handling. Something shifted in Archer's expression, interest, perhaps. Mr. Romano will be pleased to hear that. Many aspects of post-war European business operate in gray areas. The hotel proved to be small but luxurious, located near the Champs-Élysées. Hattie found herself in a suite that would have cost a month's salary in Boston. This is very generous, she remarked. Mr. Romano believes in appropriate accommodations, Archer replied, handing her an envelope. Your meeting details. A car will collect you at 9 tomorrow morning. Alone in the suite, Hattie unpacked methodically, hanging her carefully selected wardrobe. The envelope contained a simple card with an address in the 16th arrondissement and the name La Rubis. A nightclub? Unusual for a morning business meeting. From the window, she could see the Seine winding through Paris, the late afternoon sun glinting off its surface. Somewhere across that river was Dante Romano, the man who might offer her salvation or complication. The telegram from her cousin in Boston had arrived just before her departure. Be careful. Romano name has connections, not just business. Hattie touched the small Derringer pistol concealed in her vanity case, another inheritance from her father, along with instructions on its use. A lady should always be prepared, he'd insisted, especially one who might someday handle less than honest men. That evening, she dined alone in the hotel restaurant, observing the Parisian elite around her. Women in Christian Dior, men with the confident air of those who'd survived the war and prospered afterward. She'd worn this mask before in Savannah society, the poised young woman with perfect manners hiding calculations behind her smile. Later, in bed, Hattie reviewed her strategy. Present herself as competent but not threatening, express admiration but not servility, display enough knowledge to be valuable, but not enough to appear dangerous. She needed this position desperately, not just for financial security, but for the protection a powerful employer might provide should her father's past follow her to Europe. Tomorrow she would meet Dante Romano, this mysterious businessman with diverse interests and an apparent preference for American-educated female accountants. A strange requirement that raised questions she pushed aside. Beggars couldn't be choosers, and despite her pedigree, Haddon Montgomery was now decidedly a beggar. Just an accounting position, she whispered to herself as she drifted toward sleep. Nothing more complicated than that. Paris sparkled outside her window, beautiful and indifferent to her private fears. Somewhere across the city, unknown to Hattie, Dante Romano reviewed her file once more before closing it decisively. Neither of them could possibly anticipate how their worlds would collide when morning came. 9 o'clock found Hattie stepping from the black Citroën in front of La Rubis. In daylight, the nightclub's facade was understated, a discreet brass plaque, the only indication of its identity. The driver, silent throughout the journey, gestured toward a side entrance where another suited man waited. "Miss Montgomery," he greeted her. "This way, please." She followed him through a service corridor that opened into the main club, elegant in its emptiness, tables precisely arranged, crystal glasses catching morning light from high windows. The space exuded expensive taste, not the gaudy flash of American nightclubs, but old-world sophistication with modern touches. "Mr. Romano will see you in his office," her guide announced, leading her up a curved staircase to a landing with a single mahogany door. Hattie took a steadying breath, straightened her charcoal gray suit, professional yet feminine, and knocked. "Enter," came a voice, deep in accented Italian undertones softening American precision. Dante Romano stood at a window overlooking the club below, his back to her. Even from behind, he commanded attention, tall and broad-shouldered in a perfectly tailored suit, dark hair precisely cut. When he turned, Hattie felt an unexpected jolt. The photograph in her dossier hadn't captured him accurately. His face was all angles, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw darkened with 5 o'clock shadow despite the early hour, but it was his eyes that arrested her, amber brown, calculating, and utterly focused on her with an intensity that felt almost physical. "Miss Montgomery," he said, not moving to shake her hand. "Welcome to Paris." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Romano," she replied, holding his gaze despite the urge to look away. He gestured to a chair in front of his desk, but remained standing. "Your qualifications are impressive. Radcliffe College, summa cum laude, experience managing a significant family business." "Yes, though the shipping industry faced challenges after the war," she answered carefully. "Challenges," he repeated, something knowing in his tone. "Your father's company declared bankruptcy 6 months ago amid accusations of financial impropriety. Charges were never filed, but the scandal was substantial." Hattie's chest tightened. Of course he would investigate her. "My father maintained his innocence until his death," she said, voice steady despite the pain. "The books I managed were always in order." "I'm sure they were," Duke replied, finally taking his seat. "What interests me, Miss Montgomery, is that you're seeking employment in Paris rather than rebuilding in Savannah. Sometimes a fresh start is necessary, Mr. Romano. I imagine you understand that, having established yourself here rather than New York." A flicker of surprise crossed his features, the first crack in his composed facade. "You've done your research. Basic due diligence," she countered. I wouldn't consider working for someone without understanding their background. And what exactly do you understand about my background? He leaned forward slightly. That you manage several successful businesses in Paris, that you relocated after the war, that you prefer American employees in key positions. She paused. And that your enterprises likely operate with a degree of flexibility regarding certain regulations. Duke's expression hardened. Careful, Miss Montgomery. Assumptions can be dangerous. Not assumptions, Mr. Romano. Observations. Hattie opened her portfolio, removing several pages of financial analysis. Your advertisement requested someone with international accounting experience. Such experience necessarily includes understanding the gray areas of cross-border commerce. She placed the papers on his desk. These are projections based on publicly available information about your businesses, demonstrating potential tax advantages through restructuring. I've identified several inefficiencies in your current model. Duke studied the pages, his expression unreadable. When he looked up, something had changed in his assessment of her. You prepared this before our meeting? I believe in being prepared, she replied simply. He rose abruptly. Come with me. Surprised, Hattie followed him from the office, down a different corridor than she'd entered through. They emerged into a private elevator that took them to the building's top floor. Duke led her into a penthouse apartment that sprawled across the entire level, its windows offering panoramic views of Paris. Your nightclub has an apartment? She asked, taking in the luxurious space. I live where I work, Duke replied. Easier that way. He approached a bookshelf that slid aside at his touch, revealing a hidden room. Inside, 3 men worked at desks covered with ledgers and calculating machines. They looked up in surprise. Gentlemen, take a break, Duke ordered. After they filed out, he turned to Hattie. This is what you'd actually be managing. The room contained financial records far more extensive than a few nightclubs and restaurants would require. Maps on the walls marked shipping routes across Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. A separate ledger system in a distinct color coding system sat apart from the others. You're not just a businessman, Hattie said quietly. No, Duke confirmed, watching her closely. Still interested in the position? Hattie approached one of the ledgers, flipping through complex entries that disguised their true purpose behind layers of code and misdirection. Similar to systems she'd seen in her father's private records, the ones she'd helped create. Your accounting methods are outdated, she said, meeting his eyes directly. I can improve them. For the first time, Dante Romano smiled a small, dangerous curve of his lips that transformed his face. That remains to be seen, Miss Montgomery. Duke closed the hidden door behind them, the bookcase sliding seamlessly back into place. In the living room, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offering one to Hattie. It's 10 in the morning, she observed. Business hours operate differently in my world, he replied. Consider it a test of adaptability. Hattie accepted the glass but didn't drink. What exactly is your business, Mr. Romano? Beyond the nightclubs and restaurants. Import-export, primarily. He sat across from her. Luxury goods for discerning clients who prefer discretion over paperwork. Smuggling, she clarified. A crude term for a sophisticated operation, Duke corrected, sipping his whiskey. Post-war Europe has created opportunities. Borders redrawn, regulations in flux, demand for quality goods outpacing legal supply chains. And your competition? Hattie asked. I imagine such profitable opportunities attract attention. Something darkened in Duke's expression. Knox Holloway, another American with European ambitions. He controls the Southern Territories, an arrangement that's becoming increasingly contested. Hence the need for better financial organization, she deduced. Wars require funding, legitimate or otherwise. Duke studied her with renewed interest. You speak very frankly for someone in your position. Would you prefer I pretend not to understand what I'm walking into? Hattie set down her untouched drink. My father taught me that clear terms make for successful arrangements. Very well. Duke set his glass aside. The position requires managing 2 separate financial systems, our legitimate businesses and our other interests. Complete confidentiality is non-negotiable. You would have access to information that would be valuable to competitors and authorities alike. I understand discretion, Hattie assured him. The compensation includes this, Duke continued, sliding a folder toward her. Inside was a contract offering a salary that made Hattie's breath catch, along with an apartment in the 16th arrondissement and various allowances. This is generous, she acknowledged. The risks justify the compensation, he replied. But there's another element to consider. Duke rose, moving to the window. Against the Paris skyline, His silhouette was imposing. My father established our organization in Paris after fleeing fascist Italy. He believed in creating a legacy, a family business in every sense. My position requires certain appearances. Hattie felt a shift in the conversation, warning bells ringing faintly. What kind of appearances? Stability, respectability. Duke turned to face her. A wife would provide both. The room seemed to still around her. Excuse me? The advertisement wasn't just for an accountant, Miss Montgomery. It was for a potential spouse, someone with the skills to assist in business and the background to move in social circles without raising suspicions. Hattie stood, anger flaring. You misrepresented the position. I presented it incompletely, Duke corrected. The financial role is genuine and yours regardless. The personal arrangement would develop separately, if compatible. You're proposing a business merger disguised as marriage, she said incredulously. I'm proposing a mutually beneficial arrangement. His voice remained calm. You need a fresh start away from scandal. I need a partner who understands my world without being consumed by it. Hattie gathered her portfolio with trembling fingers. I came for a job, Mr. Romano, not to audition as a wife. Consider both options, he replied, unmoved by her reaction. You have financial expertise I need. Whether our arrangement extends beyond professional is a separate discussion. This is inappropriate, she insisted. In conventional circles, perhaps. Duke approached, close enough that she could detect the faint scent of his cologne, something expensive and subtle. But you didn't come to Paris for convention, did you? Your research into my businesses, your understanding of gray areas, you're seeking something beyond ordinary employment. His perception unsettled her. You know nothing about me. I know your father's suicide left you alone with a ruined reputation and empty accounts, Duke said quietly. I know you created financial systems sophisticated enough to avoid prosecution despite your father's activities. I know talent when I see it, Miss Montgomery. Hattie stepped back, needing distance from his intensity. The accounting position. Is that offer genuine? Completely. You impressed me with your preparation and directness. She took a steadying breath. Then I accept that role, nothing more. For now, Duke agreed, the hint of a smile touching his lips. You'll start tomorrow. Archer will help you move from the hotel to your apartment today. He handed her a key. 17 Rue des Artistes, 3rd floor. Security is already in place. As Hattie turned to leave, Duke added, One more thing, Miss Montgomery. She paused at the door. Whatever you're running from in America, it won't find you here. My protection extends to all my employees. The offer hung in the air between them, tempting in its security. Hattie nodded once before departing, her mind reeling with the encounter. In the elevator, she finally allowed herself to tremble, the full reality of her situation hitting her. She'd come seeking financial salvation, and found something far more complicated, a man whose power was both alluring and frightening, whose offer promised safety but demanded compromise. The accounting position alone would rebuild her finances. She could maintain professional distance, ignore the undercurrent of his other proposal. Yet as the elevator descended, Hattie couldn't deny the small, reckless part of her that had responded to Duke Romano's presence, to his confidence, his intensity, and the dangerous world he commanded. Paris spread before her as she emerged onto the street, beautiful and oblivious. Somewhere in this city was her mother's past, her own potential future. And now, unexpectedly, a man who saw through her carefully constructed facade, to the woman beneath the woman willing to bend rules and cross lines when necessary. It was terrifying. And yet, for the first time since her father's death, Hattie felt truly alive. The apartment on Rue des Artistes exceeded Hattie's expectations. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating herringbone floors, elegant moldings, and furniture that seamlessly blended antique French pieces with modern comforts. A small balcony offered views of a tree-lined street, and, in the distance, the Seine. Mr. Romano acquired this building last year, Archer explained as he supervised the delivery of her luggage. The other apartments house staff and associates. Convenient for keeping everyone under watch, Hattie observed. Archer's expression remained neutral. For providing security, the top-floor apartment belongs to me and my wife, Magnolia. She suggested you join us for dinner tonight, help you settle in. The unexpected kindness caught Hattie off guard. That would be lovely, thank you. After Archer departed, Hattie explored her new home. The kitchen contained fully stocked cabinets. The closet revealed several new dresses and coats in her size, an intrusion that both irritated and impressed her. In the study, she discovered a state-of-the-art adding machine and typewriter beside a telephone. A knock at the door revealed a young woman with a French accent. "Mademoiselle Montgomery? I am Claudette, Mr. Romano's assistant. I've brought your schedule." The typed itinerary detailed her first week. Mornings at Le Rubis, reviewing legitimate business records. Afternoons in what was simply labeled secondary office at an address in Montmartre, and several appointments with Duke's various business managers. "Mr. Romano also requested I bring you this," Claudette added, handing over a small box. Inside lay a delicate gold bracelet with a tiny key charm. Attached was a card in elegant handwriting. "For your desk at the secondary office. Welcome to Paris. D.R." That evening, dinner with Archer and Magnolia Blackwood revealed unexpected dimensions to Duke's organization. Their apartment, larger than hers but similarly appointed, felt genuinely homey. Magnolia, a vivacious brunette with a Mississippi accent thicker than molasses, embraced Hattie like a long-lost friend. "Lord, it's good to have another Southern girl around," she exclaimed. "These Frenchmen think they invented sophistication. But honey, they ain't seen proper hospitality till they've been to the American South." Over a surprisingly excellent pot roast, Hattie learned that Archer had been friends with Duke's father in New York. "Followed Sal to Paris after the war," Archer explained. "Europe was reinventing itself. Perfect time for Americans with vision and resources." "And what about Duke?" Hattie asked carefully. Was this his vision too? Magnolia and Archer exchanged glances. "Duke was different after the war," Magnolia said softly. "Came back changed. Harder. When Sal died, Duke stepped up, rebuilt everything bigger, smarter. The organization needed his strength," Archer added. "Especially with Holloway making moves from Marseille." "Is this Knox Holloway truly such a threat?" Hattie asked. "He controls the southern ports," Archer replied. "For 2 years, we maintained an understanding. Recently, he's been testing boundaries, which is why your timing is perfect." "Sugar?" Magnolia interjected. "Duke needs to shore things up. Legitimate business, proper appearances. A woman's touch wouldn't hurt either." Hattie nearly choked on her wine. "I'm here as an accountant, not a decorator." "Of course," Magnolia patted her hand. "But you might be surprised how many problems in this world can be solved by a smart woman with good intuition." The next morning, Hattie reported to Le Rubis at precisely 9. The nightclub was being cleaned, chairs still upturned on tables. Duke emerged from his office as she approached, his sharp gaze taking in her appearance, a tailored navy dress with subtle accessories, professional yet elegant. "You look rested," he commented. "The apartment is satisfactory?" "More than, thank you." She kept her tone businesslike. "Though I wasn't expecting a wardrobe. Paris requires certain standards," he replied without apology. "The bracelet?" Hattie touched her wrist where the gold key gleamed. "It was thoughtful, if unnecessary." "Few things in my world are truly necessary, Miss Montgomery. That doesn't diminish their value." He gestured toward his office. "Shall we begin?" The morning passed in a detailed review of Duke's legitimate holdings, more extensive than Hattie had imagined. Beyond Le Rubis, he owned 2 restaurants, a hotel, an art gallery specializing in modern works, and significant real estate throughout the 16th arrondissement. "Your legal businesses are impressively profitable," she noted, reviewing the figures. "Why risk the other enterprises?" "Legitimate business grows slowly," Duke replied. "The other side provides capital for expansion and opportunities unavailable through traditional channels." After lunch at a nearby café where Duke was treated with deference bordering on fear by the staff, they traveled to Montmartre. The secondary office occupied the upper floor of a modest building above a jazz club. Inside, Hattie discovered a sophisticated operation. 3 men and 2 women worked at various stations, maintaining parallel books that tracked shipments, payments, and inventory outside official channels. "Philippe oversees daily operations here," Duke introduced a serious Frenchman. "You'll work directly with him on reconciling our various interests." Philippe's initial skepticism was evident, but as Hattie demonstrated her understanding of their coding system, quickly identifying several inefficiencies, his attitude warmed. "Mademoiselle has a talent for numbers," he conceded to Duke. "She has a talent for much more than that," Duke replied, his gaze lingering on Hattie in a way that made her pulse quicken despite herself. By week's end, Hattie had established a rhythm. Mornings with the legitimate books, afternoons immersed in the shadow accounting that revealed the true scope of Duke's empire. His operation was sophisticated but needed modernization, exactly the challenge her restless mind craved. Friday evening found her working late at the Montmartre office, alone except for the muted sounds of jazz from the club below. The door opened, revealing Duke with 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne. "Celebrating something?" she asked, setting aside her pencil. "Your first week," he replied, pouring the golden liquid. "You've impressed Philippe, not an easy feat." "The systems needed updating," she said simply. "I enjoy puzzles, as do I." Duke handed her a glass, their fingers brushing. "You're a puzzle I'm still solving. Haddon Montgomery." The use of her full name in his rich voice sent an unexpected shiver through her. "There's nothing mysterious about me, Mr. Romano." "Duke," he corrected. "And we both know that's not true." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." As they drank, Hattie realized she'd already begun adapting to this dangerous new world, and the man at its center more quickly than she'd ever intended. The temperature dropped as December advanced, turning Paris streets into glittering showcases of Christmas lights and festive window displays. 2 weeks into her employment, Hattie found herself gradually accepted into Duke's inner circle. Philippe now sought her approval on accounting matters. The staff at La Rubis greeted her by name. Even Duke's driver, Marcel, had begun offering small smiles. Only Duke himself remained carefully distant after their champagne toast, maintaining professional courtesy while revealing little of himself. He traveled frequently to Marseille, Brussels, even a brief trip to London, returning with tight expressions that spoke of business complications he didn't share. "The holidays make him tense," Magnolia explained over coffee one afternoon in Hattie's apartment. They'd fallen into the habit of weekly visits, a small taste of Southern sisterhood in this foreign city. Christmas was Sal's favorite. His death 3 years ago hit Duke hard, especially since it happened right before the holidays. "How did his father die?" Hattie asked, seizing the rare opportunity for insight. Magnolia's expression darkened. "Official story was heart failure. Truth is, he was poisoned. Never proven who did it. But Duke always suspected Holloway. Hence the rivalry," Hattie murmured. "It's more complicated than that," Magnolia sighed. "Duke and Knox were actually friends once, back in New York. Both came to Europe after the war, established territories. Something happened between them, something Arch won't discuss even with me." That evening, returning from dinner at a small bistro near her apartment, Hattie found Duke waiting in her living room. "Breaking and entering is generally frowned upon," she remarked, removing her coat. "Even for landlords." "Security check," he replied, though his casual posture in her armchair suggested otherwise. "You've been asking questions about my father's death." The directness caught her off guard. Magnolia mentioned it. "I was curious. Curiosity in my world can be dangerous." Duke's voice remained level, but tension radiated from him. "What else are you curious about, Hattie?" Her nickname on his lips created an unexpected intimacy. She settled across from him, deciding on honesty. "Your history with Knox Holloway. The real reason you need to present a more legitimate image. Why you're willing to consider marriage to achieve it." A silence stretched between them before Duke finally spoke. "My father built his organization on personal relationships, handshakes, family connections, old-world loyalty. It worked in his time." He stood, moving to the window. "The world is changing. Modern criminal enterprises require modern approaches, banks, legitimate fronts, political connections. Knox understands this. He's been systematically buying influence, making strategic marriages into European families. And you need to counter with the same approach," Hattie concluded. Duke turned, something unreadable in his eyes. "My father was old-fashioned about family, wanted me to marry into one of the established Italian families. I resisted." "Why?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. "I watched my mother live that life, the obligatory wife, tolerated but never truly respected. I swore I'd never subject anyone to that existence." His jaw tightened. "When my father died, his last words to me were about legacy, family, continuation." Hattie recognized the weight of unfulfilled promises in his voice. "So you compromise sought someone with both skills and suitable background." "A partnership, not a prison," Duke clarified. "Someone who would enter the arrangement with open eyes and equal standing." The room felt suddenly too warm, the air charged with implications. Hattie rose, needing distance. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because tomorrow night is the December Gala at the French-American Business Association. As my financial consultant, your presence would be expected." He produced an envelope, and because Knox Holloway will be there with his new fiancée, the daughter of a French diplomat. Hattie accepted the invitation, understanding dawning. "You want me to play a role? I want you to be who you are, intelligent, composed, familiar with both cultures." Duke stepped closer. "The accounting position was always genuine, Hattie, but there are other ways you could strengthen my position, if you were willing." "As your wife?" she challenged. "Eventually, perhaps." His gaze held hers. For now, simply as the woman at my side. Something in his directness disarmed her, practiced defenses. Why me? Surely there are women in Paris more established, more connected. Because you understand both worlds, the legitimate and the shadow. Because you've faced scandal and survived. His voice lowered. Because from the moment you walked into my office, you've never once looked at me with fear. The admission hung between them, surprisingly vulnerable from a man who controlled his world so completely. Hattie found herself responding to his honesty with her own. My father wasn't just accused of financial impropriety, she said quietly. He was laundering money for certain interests in New York, the same world you come from. When things collapsed, he chose suicide over prison or worse. I helped create the systems that hid their activities for years. Duke's expression revealed nothing. You were protecting your family. I was good at it, she corrected. The deception, the coded ledgers, the parallel accounts. It wasn't just duty, I enjoyed the challenge. What does that make me? Someone who belongs in my world more than you've admitted, Duke replied softly. The truth of his assessment resonated uncomfortably. Hattie turned away, needing to regain her equilibrium. The gala. What exactly would attending with you imply? Publicly? That you're my financial consultant and companion. Privately? Nothing more than you're comfortable with. He moved toward the door. A car will collect you at 8 tomorrow evening. Wear something memorable. After he departed, Hattie opened the armoire containing the dresses she hadn't selected. Among them hung a gown she'd overlooked, deep emerald silk that would complement both her coloring and, she realized, the gold bracelet Duke had given her. The man was nothing if not thorough in his planning. Yet tonight had revealed cracks in his carefully maintained facade, glimpses of the weight he carried, the expectations that shaped his choices, not so different from the pressures that had defined her own life, despite their vastly different backgrounds. Opening her desk drawer, Hattie removed the photograph she kept hidden there, her parents at their last Christmas together, before scandal and suicide destroyed everything. Her father's voice seemed to echo from memory. Sometimes survival requires reinvention. Hattie girl, the trick is not losing yourself in the role. Tomorrow she would enter Duke Romano's public world on his arm. A calculated move in a game with stakes she was only beginning to understand. The Southern Belle accountant and the Mafia Millionaire, a partnership of convenience with boundaries already blurring. The question that kept her awake long into the night wasn't whether she could play this role convincingly, but whether the role was beginning to play her. The French-American Business Association Gala transformed the Grand Hotel's ballroom into a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables adorned with white roses and silver ornaments. A small orchestra played holiday classics, while Paris's elite circulated in evening finery. Hattie smoothed the emerald silk of her gown, fighting unexpected nerves as Duke handed their invitation to the doorman. In the 2 hours since he'd collected her, she'd discovered yet another side to him, the charming businessman who discussed art and politics with easy sophistication, whose hand at the small of her back felt both protective and possessive. Remember, Duke murmured as they entered, tonight we're simply successful Americans abroad. Financial matters, nothing more. I know how to play a role, Duke, she replied, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. His gaze traveled appreciatively over her appearance, the gown that fit as if made for her, the elegant updo that showcased the graceful line of her neck, the subtle makeup that enhanced rather than masked her features. That's not a role, he said quietly. That's armor. The perceptiveness of his comment unsettled her. Before she could respond, they were approached by a silver-haired Frenchman with aristocratic bearing. Romano. He greeted Duke with minimal warmth. I didn't expect you this evening. Ambassador Valois, Duke replied smoothly. May I introduce Haddon Montgomery, my financial consultant. Hattie, Ambassador Valois oversees Franco-American trade relations. Mademoiselle, the ambassador acknowledged with barely concealed skepticism. American business interests in Paris continue to diversify. The reconstruction offers unique opportunities, Hattie replied in perfect French, particularly for those with vision beyond traditional models. Something shifted in Valois' assessment. You speak like a native. My mother was Parisian, she explained, from the 7th arrondissement. Her family were Montesquieu's. The ambassador's eyebrows rose. Indeed? The banking family? Distant cousins, Hattie confirmed, the truth wrapped in deliberate vagueness. How interesting. Valois' demeanor warmed fractionally. Perhaps you'll join our Franco-American Cultural Committee. We're always seeking members with connections to both worlds. As the conversation continued, Hattie felt Duke's subtle approval in the slight pressure of his hand against her back. She'd just secured them an entree to circles his money alone couldn't penetrate. Later, as Duke guided her through introductions to various business associates, she understood the true purpose of the evening. Each conversation revealed another facet of Duke's legitimate empire. The art dealer whose gallery showcased pieces from Duke's collection, the hotel magnate considering a partnership for expansion, the shipping executive seeking investment. "You're establishing alibis," Hattie whispered as they moved between groups, "creating witnesses to your legitimate business activities." Duke's eyes crinkled with appreciation. "Perception creates reality. The more people who believe in my legitimate success, the fewer who question its origins," she finished. "Clever. I prefer thorough." His fingers interlaced with hers, a gesture both natural and startling. "Like someone else I know." The moment fractured as a cultured voice interrupted. "Duke Romano, still playing businessman. I see." They turned to face a handsome man in his 40s, blonde hair silvered at the temples, blue eyes cold despite his smile. A young French woman clutched his arm, diamonds glittering at her throat and wrists. "Knox," Duke acknowledged, his body tensing imperceptibly. "Congratulations on your engagement. Mademoiselle Valois, I presume?" The young woman, barely 20, Hattie guessed, offered a practiced smile. "Claudine, please. Father speaks highly of your establishments, Mr. Romano." Her father being the ambassador we just met, Duke explained to Hattie. "Knox Holloway, Haddon Montgomery." "Charmed," Knox drawled, his American accent carrying southern inflections not unlike Hattie's own. "Georgia, if I'm not mistaken?" "A long way from home, Miss Montgomery." "As are you, Mr. Holloway," she countered smoothly. "Tennessee, perhaps?" A flicker of surprise crossed his features. "Kentucky, originally. You have a good ear, and an excellent memory for details," Duke added, his hand finding the small of Hattie's back once more. "Hattie manages my financial portfolios." Knox's gaze sharpened, assessing her anew. "Financial and personal portfolios. It appears Mr. Romano values competence in all areas," Hattie replied, maintaining her composure despite the insinuation. "Something I imagine you appreciate as well, given your own diverse enterprises." Knox laughed, genuinely amused. "She's perfect for you, Duke. Beautiful, sharp, and clearly comfortable with ambiguity." He raised his glass in mock toast. "To new partnerships. May they prove profitable." As they moved away, Hattie felt Duke's tension. "He's more dangerous than I expected," she murmured. "Knox is calculating," Duke replied. "Every move serves multiple purposes. His engagement to Valois' daughter gives him diplomatic protection and social standing. While undermining your position," Hattie deduced, "the ambassador clearly dislikes you, but responded to my family connection. Exactly why your presence tonight matters," Duke acknowledged. "You opened doors that have been closed to me." The orchestra began a waltz. Duke extended his hand. "Dance with me." On the dance floor, his lead was confident without being controlling. Hattie followed with the grace instilled by years of Southern social training, acutely aware of their audience's speculative glances. "Knox is watching us," she whispered. "Everyone is watching us," Duke corrected, drawing her fractionally closer. The mysterious Southern belle who's captured Duke Romano's attention. "You've created quite an impression." "Playing my part," Hattie reminded him, though the line between performance and reality felt increasingly blurred in his arms. "Are you?" Duke's amber eyes held hers. "Because what I see isn't a role, Hattie. It's who you've always been beneath the proper exterior, someone who thrives in complexity." The waltz ended, leaving them standing closer than propriety strictly allowed. Around them, the gala continued. But in that moment, the crowded ballroom seemed to recede, leaving only the charged space between them. "You didn't tell me Claudine was the ambassador's daughter," Hattie said, needing to break the moment's intensity. "Would it have changed your approach?" "It would have helped me understand the stakes," she countered. Duke guided her toward the terrace doors. In the relative privacy of the winter night, Paris sparkled below them. "The stakes," he said quietly, "are everything I've built. Knox doesn't just want territory, he wants legitimacy, the kind that comes with connections to power, the kind you just demonstrated you can help provide." The realization dawned cold and clear. "That's why you hired me, not just for accounting skills, but for my background, my education, the veneer of legitimacy." "Initially, yes," Duke admitted, "but you've proven to be far more than a social passport." His honesty disarmed her practiced defenses. In the moonlight, with Paris spread beneath them like a glittering promise, Hattie recognized the dangerous truth. She was no longer simply playing a role in Duke Romano's world. She was becoming essential to it. 3 days after the gala, Hattie was reviewing ledgers in the Montmartre office when the door burst open. Philippe entered, his normally composed features tight with alarm. "There's been an incident at the shipping warehouse," he announced. "Duke requests your presence immediately." 20 minutes later, their car pulled up to a nondescript building near the Seine. Police vehicles surrounded the entrance, their lights flashing against the gray December sky. Duke stood talking with a detective, Thatcher Reed. Hattie recalled from their brief introduction the previous week. Duke's face showed no emotion as she approached, but his eyes communicated urgency. "Hattie, thank you for coming. Detective Reed needs access to our shipping records." She understood immediately. "Of course. Which shipments are in question?" "The Mediterranean imports from last week," Reed supplied. "There's been an unfortunate discovery." Inside, the warehouse presented a scene of controlled chaos. Officers catalogued wooden crates, while others photographed what appeared to be bloodstains on the concrete floor. In a small office overlooking the main floor, Duke closed the door behind them. "3 men dead," he said without preamble. "Found inside one of our supply crates from Marseille. All 3 worked for Holloway." Hattie processed the implications quickly. "He planted them in your shipment to implicate you." "Precisely," Reed confirmed, lighting a cigarette. "Fortunately, Duke has friends in the department who ensured we were first on scene." His American accent carried the flat vowels of Chicago. "We need documentation proving the crate's origins and handling anything to establish Duke's non-involvement." "I'll need access to the specific manifests," Hattie replied, professional mode engaging despite the grim circumstances. "Already arranged." Duke indicated a briefcase on the desk. "Everything from the Marseille shipments. We need absolute clarity on the chain of custody." For the next 2 hours, Hattie worked methodically, creating a timeline that documented every handler, inspector, and transport worker who touched the shipment. When she finished, she had established a 4-hour window during which the crate had sat unattended in Marseille, ample time for Holloway's men to make their grisly addition. "This should be sufficient," Reed said, reviewing her work. "Clean, thorough, defensible if questioned." He turned to Duke. "I'll redirect the investigation toward Marseille, but this won't be the end." Holloway's making his move. After the detective departed, Duke's carefully maintained composure slipped. He slammed his fist against the desk. "3 bodies in my warehouse. The audacity. He's trying to destabilize you," Hattie observed. "Force errors. It's more personal than that." Duke ran a hand through his usually immaculate hair. "Knox wants me destroyed, not just defeated." "Why?" Hattie asked the question that had lingered since her conversation with Magnolia. Duke's gaze turned distant. "After the war, we both came to Europe. Different reasons, similar ambitions. We established territories, maintained respect. Then he married Elena, a woman from Sicily with family connections. I warned him she couldn't be trusted. What happened? She betrayed him to a rival family." "I discovered the plot," informed Knox. His jaw tightened. "He didn't believe me until it was too late. Elena died in the attempt on his life. Knox survived, but blamed me for her death, claimed I manufactured the evidence because I wanted her for myself." "Was there truth to his accusation?" Hattie asked carefully. "Elena and I were close once, before Knox," Duke admitted. "Nothing more complicated than friendship, but Knox saw shadows where none existed. After her death, he changed, became obsessed with taking everything I built." The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Hattie. Impulsively, she placed her hand over his. "I believe you." Duke's fingers curled around hers, a moment of connection in the midst of crisis. "Your trust means more than you know." Their return to La Rubis was marked by tense silence. Duke immediately gathered his lieutenants for strategy discussions, while Hattie set up in a corner of his office, creating documentation to reinforce their defensive position should questions arise from less sympathetic authorities. Near midnight, after the others had departed, Duke approached her desk. "You should get some rest." "I'm almost finished," she replied, fighting exhaustion. "The paperwork needs to be perfect." "It already is." He gently removed the pencil from her fingers. "You've done more today than I had any right to expect." Hattie met his gaze. "I'm protecting my interests as much as yours. My position, my new life here, they depend on your organization's stability." "Is that all that concerns you?" Duke asked, the question layered with meaning. Before she could answer, the telephone rang. Duke answered, his expression darkening as he listened. "When? How many?" A pause. "Lock it down. No one enters until I arrive. He hung up, reaching immediately for his coat. There's been an attack on Le Rubis. Fire in the main room. Gunfire reported. Was anyone hurt? Hattie asked, gathering her things. 2 of our men wounded, 1 critically. Duke checked his pistol before securing it inside his jacket. Stay here. It's safer. No, Hattie countered firmly. If this is Holloway's response, you'll need documentation of damages for insurance and legal purposes. I'm coming with you. Duke hesitated, then nodded once. Stay close to me. Le Rubis presented a scene of destruction when they arrived. Smoke hung in the air despite the broken windows that let in the winter chill. Elegant furniture lay shattered, mirrors cracked, the bar's bottles shot to pieces, sending rivers of expensive liquor across the floor. Archer met them at the entrance, face grim. Professional hit. 6 men, well-armed. They weren't just sending a message, they were trying to eliminate anyone inside. Duke surveyed the wreckage of his flagship business, rage evident in the taut line of his shoulders. Casualties? Marcel took a bullet in the shoulder. Henri's in surgery chest wound. Archer lowered his voice. There's something else. They left this. He handed Duke a small box. Inside lay a tarnished key attached to a familiar gold chain identical to the bracelet Duke had given Hattie, but weathered by time and wear. Elena's, Duke whispered, closing his fist around it. Hattie understood immediately. He's escalating beyond business, making it personal. It's always been personal, Duke replied, voice hollow. But bringing Elena into this crosses a line even Knox respected until now. As they moved through the devastation, cataloging damage, Hattie felt a growing certainty she had crossed a threshold into Duke's world far beyond financial management. This wasn't just about ledgers and appearances anymore. Blood had been spilled. Lives threatened. Your apartment isn't safe, Duke said as they finally prepared to leave near dawn. Holloway's men clearly have more intelligence on our operations than we realized. Where should I go? Hattie asked, fatigue making her voice rough. Duke's answer was immediate. My residence. The penthouse has security even Knox can't penetrate. The suggestion should have alarmed her, crossing personal and professional boundaries, but the night's violence had shifted her perspective. All right, she agreed simply. In the car, Duke's hand found hers in the darkness. Neither spoke, but their fingers interlaced in silent acknowledgement of changed circumstances. The neat compartments Hattie had tried to maintain accountant, social companion, potential asset, had collapsed under the weight of real danger. As dawn broke over Paris, casting golden light across the Seine, Duke guided her into his penthouse. Without discussion, he led her to a guest suite adjacent to his own rooms. Try to rest, he said, lingering at her door. We'll need clear heads to plan our response. Exhaustion overwhelmed propriety as Hattie impulsively reached up, her palm against his cheek. Be careful, Duke. Holloway wants you unbalanced, emotional. He covered her hand with his own. I haven't survived this long by letting emotion overrule strategy. Even now? She challenged softly. With Elena's key delivered as a taunt, Duke's amber eyes darkened. Even now, he affirmed, though something in his voice suggested a battle between control and vengeance. Because now I have more to protect than my business. The implication hung between them, unspoken but unmistakable. As Duke reluctantly withdrew, Hattie realized the truth that had been building since that first meeting in his office. Her fate and Duke's were now inextricably linked, forged together in the fire of crisis. Whatever came next, they would face it not as employer and employee, but as allies whose trust had been tempered in danger's crucible. Hattie woke disoriented, afternoon sunlight slanting through unfamiliar curtains. Momentary panic subsided as she remembered Duke's penthouse, the aftermath of violence, seeking safety in the early morning hours. The elegant guest suite surrounded her with subtle luxury cream walls, mahogany furniture, silk bedding in soft blue. A gentle knock preceded Magnolia's entrance, bearing a tray. Thought you might need this. Sugar, she said, setting down coffee and croissants. Rough night from what Archer told me. Le Rubis is destroyed, Hattie confirmed, accepting the coffee gratefully. Have you seen Duke? Been locked in his study with Archer and Philippe since dawn. Magnolia perched on the edge of the bed. Holloway crossed a line, using Elena against him. She shook her head. Some wounds never fully heal. He loved her, Hattie said quietly, a statement rather than question. In his way, Magnolia replied carefully. Duke doesn't love easily, but when he does, it's absolute. Elena was his first heartbreak, losing her to Knox, then losing her entirely. And now Knox uses her memory as a weapon, which tells me he's desperate, Magnolia observed. Desperate men make mistakes, but they're also dangerous. She squeezed Hattie's hand. Duke needs steady ground right now. Someone who sees clearly when emotion clouds judgment. The weight of Magnolia's implications settled between them. I'm his accountant, Hattie reminded her, though the protest sounded hollow even to her own ears. Honey, you haven't been just an accountant since the moment you stepped off that train, Magnolia replied gently. Question is, what are you prepared to be now that the stakes have changed? After Magnolia departed, Hattie showered and dressed in clothes thoughtfully, provided a simple gray skirt and cream blouse that somehow matched her personal style perfectly. Another reminder of Duke's meticulous attention to detail. She found him alone in his study, jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to reveal forearms corded with tension as he examined maps spread across his desk. Paris sectioned into territories, marked with annotations in Duke's precise handwriting. You should still be resting, he said without looking up. I've never been good at idleness. She approached the desk. Planning counterstrikes? Assessing vulnerabilities, Duke corrected. Holloways and hours. Last night was just the beginning. The sunlight caught his profile, illuminating fatigue etched into features usually guarded by control. A day's stubble darkened his jaw, and a muscle worked near his temple, small cracks in the composed facade she'd grown accustomed to. When did you last sleep? She asked. Sleep is a luxury we can't afford right now. He straightened, rolling his shoulders to release tension. I've moved additional security to all properties. Your apartment is under surveillance in case Holloway's men target it believing you're there. You think I'm a target? The possibility should have terrified her, but instead brought clarity. Everyone close to me is a potential target, Duke acknowledged, finally meeting her gaze directly. Which is why you should consider returning to America once this is resolved. The suggestion struck like a physical blow. You're dismissing me? I'm protecting you. His voice roughened. This isn't your fight, Hattie, isn't it? She moved around the desk, standing before him. My accounting systems support your operations. I've documented your legitimate businesses. I stood beside you at the gala, establishing your social credibility. I helped create the paperwork to protect you after the warehouse incident. Exactly why you should distance yourself now, Duke insisted. You've seen too much, become too involved. If authorities begin serious investigations, stop. Hattie placed her palm against his chest, feeling his heart's steady rhythm beneath fine cotton. I knew what I was walking into that first day. Maybe not all the details, but the essential truth of your world. I chose to stay. Because you needed escape from your own troubles, he countered, though he made no move to step away from her touch. Not to be caught in a blood feud. Is that what you think? She held his gaze. That I'm merely using you for sanctuary? Aren't you? The question held vulnerability beneath its challenge. I was, she admitted. At first. But something changed, Duke. Maybe at the gala, maybe during the warehouse crisis, maybe last night seeing La Rubis in ruins. I stopped calculating risks and benefits. Started feeling something I didn't expect. His hand covered hers where it rested against his chest. Hattie, I'm not leaving, she interrupted. Not because I need protection or employment, but because I need you. The man who sees me clearly, who values my mind alongside my other attributes, who treats me as an equal partner. The confession hung between them, Hattie's heart thundering as Duke's expression shifted from surprise to something deeper, more primal. His fingers interlaced with hers. Do you understand what you're saying? He asked, voice low. What it means to truly belong in my world. The danger, the compromises, the sacrifices. I understand better than most, she countered. I watched my father destroy himself trying to maintain two separate lives, respectable businessman by day, criminal collaborator by night. The division broke him. Her free hand rose to Duke's face, fingertips tracing the tension in his jaw. I don't want separate lives, Duke. No more roles or facades, just truth between us, whatever that means. For a heartbeat, he remained still beneath her touch. Then something broke in his careful control. Duke's arms encircled her waist, drawing her against him as his mouth claimed hers with passionate certainty that obliterated any remaining pretense of professional distance. The kiss deepened, months of unacknowledged attraction crystallizing into desperate need. Hattie's fingers threaded through his hair as his hands traveled the curve of her spine, each touch erasing another boundary between them. When they finally separated, breathing unsteady, Duke rested his forehead against hers. I've wanted to do that since you walked into my office, he admitted, vulnerability replacing his usual guardedness. Stubborn, brilliant, fearless, Hattie the complication I never expected. "And now?" she whispered. "Now we face Holloway together," Duke replied. "Not as employer and employee, but as true partners. If that's what you truly want." "It is," she affirmed. "No more hiding who we are or what we feel. Not from each other, not from the world." As his lips found hers again, sealing their new understanding, Hattie recognized the irrevocable transformation. She had arrived in Paris seeking escape and anonymity. Instead, she'd found her truest self in the arms of a man whose dangerous world now felt like home. Christmas approached with Paris transformed by twinkling lights and festive decorations that contrasted sharply with the tension-gripping Duke's organization. In the week following the attack on Le Rubis, Hattie had fully integrated into Duke's inner circle, moving between security briefings and strategy sessions with the same confidence she brought to financial matters. Their relationship, acknowledged openly within Duke's organization, remained private from the outside world, a necessary precaution while they prepared their response to Holloway's aggression. "Our legitimate businesses provide the best battleground," Hattie advised during a strategy meeting in Duke's penthouse. Archer, Philippe, and Thatcher Reed attended. The core team assembled around the dining table converted to war room. Holloway's diplomatic connections protect his underground operations, but his legitimate investments are vulnerable. Duke studied the financial reports she'd prepared. "Explain." "Holloway owns significant shares in 3 hotels and a shipping company," Hattie detailed. "All heavily leveraged, all dependent on loans from Banque Mercier." She smiled slightly. "Where Ambassador Valois serves on the board of directors. And where your Montesquieu family connections might prove useful," Archer realized. "Precisely." Hattie opened another folder. "I've drafted a letter to my mother's cousin Maurice, currently Mercier's loan committee chairman, expressing concern about certain investments the bank has made recently." Duke's expression shifted from concentration to admiration. "Financial warfare, rather than bullets." "Hit him where it hurts most his future legitimacy," Hattie confirmed. "Squeeze his credit, force asset sales, create whispers of instability among his social circles. While we rebuild Le Rubis bigger than before," Duke added. "Show strength through creation rather than destruction." Reed nodded approvingly. "Smart play. Keeps the authorities focused on legitimate business disputes rather than underworld feuds." As the meeting concluded, Hattie felt Duke's gaze following her movements. The past week had brought a new dimension to their relationship-professional partnership during the day. Passionate intimacy at night. She had moved permanently into the penthouse, her few possessions from the apartment integrated seamlessly into Duke's space. Later that evening, they stood on the penthouse terrace despite December's chill, overlooking Paris adorned with Christmas lights. Duke wrapped his coat around her shoulders, his arms following to draw her against his chest. "You were magnificent today," he murmured against her hair. "Holloway won't see the attack coming until his financial foundation crumbles." "It's what I do best," she replied, leaning into his warmth. "Finding weaknesses in systems, creating solutions others don't anticipate." "Is that all you're doing with me?" Duke asked, a rare hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Finding weaknesses, creating solutions." Hattie turned in his embrace, meeting his amber gaze. "Is that what you fear? That I'm merely calculating advantages?" "You wouldn't be the first," he admitted. "Power attracts strategic minds. I've always understood the transactional nature of relationships in my world." The vulnerability beneath his words touched her deeply. This dangerous man who commanded an empire still questioned his worth beyond what he controlled. "What I feel for you transcended calculation the moment you sent Marcel to collect me from the train station," Hattie confessed. "I came to Paris seeking refuge and found so much more purpose, partnership, passion." She touched his face. "Found you." Duke caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I never expected you, Hattie Montgomery. The woman who matches me thought for thought, who sees my world clearly and chooses to remain anyway." "Not just remain," she corrected. "Thrive, build, together." His eyes darkened with emotion as he reached into his pocket. "I had planned to wait until Christmas," he said, producing a small velvet box. "But timing has never been our strong suit." Inside lay an emerald ring surrounded by diamonds, the green stone echoing the gown she'd worn to the gala. "This isn't about appearances or strategy," Duke said, his voice deepening. "It's about choosing our future deliberately, partners in everything." Hattie's breath caught. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" "Haddon Montgomery," Duke said, taking her hand. "Will you marry me? Not because it strengthens my position or completes my image, but because I've fallen in love with your brilliant mind, your courageous heart, and everything you are." The declaration, so direct, so unlike the calculated man she'd first met, filled Hattie with certainty. "Yes," she whispered, "not for advantage or protection, but because loving you has become as essential as breathing." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the emerald caught the lights of Paris below, winking with promise. Duke's kiss sealed their commitment, tender yet possessive, acclaiming that Hattie returned with equal fervor. Their embrace was interrupted by the telephone's insistent ring. Duke answered, his expression shifting from annoyed to alert as he listened. "When?" he asked sharply. "Where is he now?" After hanging up, he turned to Hattie, tension radiating from him. "Knox Holloway has requested a meeting. Neutral territory, just him and me. It's a trap," she stated immediately. "Possibly," Duke acknowledged, but he invoked old protocol Christmas truce, traditionally sacred even in our world. "You can't seriously be considering going alone," Hattie protested. "I'm not." Duke's hand covered hers, thumb brushing over the emerald ring. "You're coming with me." "Me?" Surprise overtook caution. "As my fiancé and partner," Duke confirmed. "Holloway is bringing Claudine. The meeting is at midnight at Église Saint-Germain's sacred ground where neither of us would risk violence." Hattie understood the symbolism immediately. A church, on Christmas Eve. He's offering some form of reconciliation? Or setting the stage for his greatest betrayal, Duke replied grimly. "Either way, we face him together." Hours later, the ancient church stood illuminated against the night sky, its medieval stones witness to centuries of Paris history. Inside, candles flickered in preparation for midnight mass, though the sanctuary remained empty save for two figures waiting near the altar, Knox Holloway and his young fiancé. Duke kept Hattie's hand firmly in his as they approached, his other hand resting inside his coat where she knew his pistol waited. "Knox." "Duke." Holloway's gaze shifted to their joined hands, noting the emerald ring with raised eyebrows. "Congratulations seem in order. Miss Montgomery has clearly made herself indispensable." "Unlike some, I recognize value when I see it," Duke replied evenly. "Why the meeting, Knox? Churches aren't typically your style." "Appropriate venues for endings," Knox answered cryptically. "And beginnings." He gestured to a small wooden box on the altar. "A peace offering. Open it." Duke approached cautiously, lifting the lid. Inside lay a tarnished pocket watch, his father's, stolen during Salvatore's murder. Beside it, documents bearing the Holloway Industries letterhead. "Transfer of ownership for the Marseille shipping interests," Knox explained. "My wedding gift to you both." Suspicion radiated from Duke. "Why?" Knox's expression shifted, something like weariness replacing his usual calculating look. "Elena would have hated what we've become, Duke, using her memory as a weapon against each other. The feud ends tonight." "Just like that?" Duke challenged. "After the warehouse. Le Rubis?" "Actions of desperate men," Knox acknowledged. "I'm tired, Duke. Tired of blood and vengeance. Claudine's father has offered me legitimacy, a new beginning. I want the same for you." Hattie studied Knox carefully, recognizing the sincerity beneath his words. "He's telling the truth," she murmured to Duke. After a moment of consideration, Duke extended his hand. "Christmas truce becomes permanent peace?" "Permanent peace," Knox confirmed, accepting the handshake. "Separate territories, mutual respect, the way Sal would have wanted it." As midnight bells began to toll, announcing Christmas Day's arrival, Hattie felt the weight of history shifting around them. Duke's arm circled her waist, drawing her against him as they exited the church into softly falling snow. "Do you trust him?" she asked quietly. "Trust requires time," Duke replied. "But I believe in new beginnings." He turned her to face him, snowflakes catching in her hair. "Especially ours." In the glow of street lamps, with Paris transformed into a winter wonderland around them, Duke Romano kissed his future bride, the Mafia Millionaire and his Southern Belle accountant partners in business, love, and the complex world they would navigate together. Hattie had stepped off that morning train seeking escape from her past. Instead, she'd found her future in the most unexpected of places, the arms of a dangerous man whose heart now belonged completely to her. As Christmas dawned over Paris, their commitment glowed brighter than any holiday light, illuminating the path forward they would walk side by side. Paris bloomed with spring's first flowers when Duke and Hattie exchanged vows on a sun-dappled April morning. The ceremony took place in the small chapel of Château Marchand, a 17th-century estate outside Paris that Duke had purchased as a wedding gift, both romantic gesture and strategic acquisition. "Something that's just ours," he'd explained when first showing Hattie the property. "Not part of the Romano legacy or built from necessity." a beginning that belongs only to us. The guest list reflected their carefully balanced world. Duke's organization intermingled with Parisian society figures, American expatriates alongside European business associates. Ambassador Valois attended with reluctant courtesy, his presence secured through Maurice Montesquieu's influence and Hattie's newly established position on the Franco-American Cultural Committee. Knox Holloway and his now wife Claudine sat in the third row, their attendance the most visible symbol of the transformed underworld dynamics. The Christmas truce had held firm through winter into spring, territories respected, business conducted with newfound cooperation. Magnolia, resplendent in lavender silk as matron of honor, dabbed tears as Hattie walked the chapel's stone aisle. Her wedding gown, ivory satin with delicate French lace, combined southern grace with Parisian elegance. Around her neck hung a single strand of pearls that had belonged to Duke's mother, retrieved from the family vault in New York. But it was the look in Duke's eyes that truly captured the moment. The control and calculation that typically governed his expressions replaced by undisguised wonder as Hattie approached. In his tailored morning suit, he looked every inch the successful businessman, rather than the dangerous force who commanded Paris's shadow economy. "You're breathtaking," he whispered when she reached him. "And you're trembling," she murmured back, surprising them both with the observation. His slight smile acknowledged the truth. "First time in my life I'm getting something I want more than power." The ceremony blended traditions, Catholic rituals honoring Duke's Italian heritage, elements of Southern custom for Hattie, and subtle nods to their unique circumstances. When they exchanged rings, Duke placed not only a diamond band alongside her emerald engagement ring, but also a small golden key, a new beginning to replace the painful symbol of the past. "With this key, I offer not just my name and protection," he vowed, his voice carrying through the hushed chapel, "but true partnership in all things. My heart, my empire, my future, they belong to us equally from this day forward." Hattie's answering vows, delivered in flawless French then repeated in English, spoke of transformation and choice. "I came to Paris seeking refuge but found purpose. Sought independence but discovered the strength in true partnership. Today I choose you, Dante Romano, not despite who you are, but because of it, the man who sees me clearly and loves me completely." The reception that followed transformed the chateau's gardens into a springtime wonderland. Champagne flowed as string quartets played beneath white tents adorned with roses and ivy. To observers, it appeared simply as an elegant wedding between a successful American businessman and his Southern bride, all evidence of their other life carefully obscured behind perfect hospitality. Archer claimed the microphone as evening approached, raising a toast to the newlyweds, to Duke and Hattie, who proved that the right partnership can transform individual strength into something far more powerful. His knowing smile conveyed the double meaning that only insiders understood. Later, as twilight painted the gardens in lavender and gold, Knox approached Duke and Hattie as they greeted guests. "Impressive gathering," he remarked, nodding toward a group that included 2 French ministers and a prominent banker. "You've achieved what Sal always wanted, respectability without sacrifice." "Not without sacrifice," Duke corrected, his hand finding Hattie's. "But with the right partner, the price becomes worthwhile." Claudine, young but increasingly poised in her role as Knox's wife, addressed Hattie directly. "I've been appointed to the Children's Hospital Board. Perhaps you'd consider joining as well? Your business expertise would be valuable." The invitation, clearly orchestrated by Knox, represented another olive branch, another opportunity to solidify their legitimate standing while reinforcing the new peace. "I'd be delighted," Hattie replied, recognizing both the strategy and the genuine opportunity. As Knox and Claudine moved on, Duke's arm slipped around Hattie's waist. "You're a natural diplomat," he observed with admiration. "Just applying accounting principles to human relations," she replied with a smile. "Assessing assets, calculating returns, investing wisely." "And what's your assessment of today's investment?" Duke asked, gesturing to their surroundings, the chateau, the guests, their new joined life. Hattie turned in his embrace, straightening his already perfect tie with practiced intimacy. "The highest possible return," she murmured. "Love, security, purpose, power, everything we both wanted but were afraid to admit." As moonlight replaced the setting sun, the celebration continued with dancing on the terrace. Duke led Hattie in a waltz, their movements perfectly synchronized after months of learning each other's rhythms in business, in bed, in the delicate dance of building their shared empire. "Mrs. Romano," he said softly, testing the name as they turned beneath the stars. "Still Miss Montgomery for business purposes," she reminded him with a teasing smile. "The separation maintains useful flexibility. Always the strategist," Duke acknowledged, spinning her elegantly before pulling her closer than strict propriety allowed. "But tonight, you're simply my wife." As the music swelled around them, surrounded by witnesses from both their worlds, Duke and Hattie's union stood formally recognized. No longer the Mafia millionaire and his unexpected Southern belle accountant, but partners in the truest sense, their separate strengths fused into something neither could have built alone. "From this day forward," Duke whispered against her hair, repeating his vow as midnight approached. "Everything together." "Everything," Hattie affirmed, the simple word carrying the weight of their extraordinary commitment. Christmas Eve, 1957. Snow fell in gentle swirls over the Chateau Marchand, transforming its elegant gardens into a winter fairyland. Inside, a massive pine tree dominated the main salon, adorned with ornaments from both America and Europe, a visible symbol of the blended life Duke and Hattie had created over the past 2 years. Hattie stood at the window watching the snow, a glass of mulled wine warming her hands. Behind her, Duke concluded a business call, his voice calm and authoritative as he confirmed details for a shipment arriving after the holidays. "Shipping lanes secured?" she asked as he joined her at the window. "All arranged," Duke confirmed, slipping an arm around her waist. "The Marseille operation is running smoothly." Knox's information about the new customs director proved valuable. Their former rival had become an unexpected ally in the months following the wedding. With Knox focused on his expanding legitimate businesses and impending fatherhood, Claudine was due in February. The territorial peace had evolved into selective collaboration. "The restructuring is nearly complete," Hattie informed him, leaning into his embrace. "By spring, 80% of our interests will operate through legitimate channels. The remaining 20% provides the capital we need for expansion, but is sufficiently isolated to protect the whole." Duke pressed a kiss to her temple. "My brilliant wife, from financial consultant to empire architect in 2 years." The transformation had indeed been remarkable. Under Hattie's guidance, Duke's operations had been systematically reorganized. Le Rubis, rebuilt and expanded, now anchored a chain of high-end entertainment venues across Europe. Their art gallery had grown into a respected auction house specializing in post-war collections. Most significantly, Romano International now operated as a legitimate import-export business handling luxury goods with all proper documentation. The shadow businesses remained but diminished in scope, operating so discreetly that even Thatcher Reed, now promoted to commissioner, could maintain his selective blindness without compromising his position. "The American expansion concerns me," Hattie admitted, turning to face her husband. "New York isn't Paris. Your history there is more complicated." Duke's family connections in New York had both advantages and significant risks. Old rivalries, unresolved tensions, expectations of traditional loyalty that conflicted with their modernized approach. "Which is why I'm sending Archer first," Duke reminded her. 3 months to test the waters, establish connections, identify potential problems. "And if problems arise?" Duke's smile held the confidence of a man who had navigated far worse challenges. "Then we adapt, as we always do, together." The word carried their shared philosophy, the partnership that had transformed both their lives and Duke's entire operation. No decision made alone, no burden carried singly, no triumph celebrated individually. A soft cry from the baby monitor interrupted their conversation. "I'll go," Duke offered, but Hattie was already moving toward the stairs. "Finish your call with Philippe," she countered. "I suspect our daughter inherited your distaste for waiting." In the nursery, painted in soft blues and creams, Hattie lifted 3-month-old Elena Sophia from her crib. Named for both their mothers, the infant had Duke's amber eyes and Hattie's determined expression, a combination that promised both beauty and formidable character. "Demanding attention on Christmas Eve," Hattie murmured, settling in the rocking chair to feed her daughter. Already understanding the strategic value of timing, motherhood had been yet another transformation, unexpected in its intensity, challenging in its demands, but ultimately as rewarding as any business acquisition. Duke had surprised her with his natural affinity for fatherhood, handling midnight feedings and diaper changes with the same focused competence he brought to business negotiations. "She's not crying anymore," Duke observed from the doorway, his expression softening as it always did when watching his wife and daughter together. "Just wanted company," Hattie replied. "Another Romano who dislikes being alone." Duke approached, kneeling beside the rocking chair to stroke his daughter's dark hair. "I have something for you," he said quietly. "An early Christmas gift." From his pocket, he produced a velvet box. Inside lay a locket containing 2 photographs, one of baby Elena, the other a sepia image of a young couple Hattie recognized as Duke's parents. "Family legacy," Duke explained, his voice carrying rare emotion. Not the business or power, but the love that sustained them through everything. The part of my father's wish I finally understand. As he fastened the locket around her neck, Hattie covered his hand with hers. Sometimes I think about that morning train, she said softly. How different everything would be if I'd chosen Boston or Chicago instead of Paris. You were always meant to step off that train, Duke replied with certainty. Just as I was meant to be waiting, whether I knew it or not. Later that night, with Elena asleep and the chateau quiet save for the crackling fireplace, they sat in the library reviewing the past year's achievements. Financial statements showed unprecedented growth. Correspondence from Maurice confirmed their standing in Parisian society had never been stronger. A letter from Magnolia, now overseeing their American Charitable Foundation, detailed the scholarships established in both their names. Did you ever imagine this? Hattie asked, gesturing to the evidence of their shared success. When you placed that advertisement seeking a financial consultant? Duke considered the question, swirling amber whiskey and crystal that caught the firelight. I imagined finding someone competent. He admitted, someone who could manage accounts and project respectability. I never imagined finding someone who would completely transform not just my business, but my understanding of power itself. How so? She prompted, genuinely curious about his reflection. I always equated power with control, Duke explained. Over territories, operations, people. What you taught me, what we've built together, showed me that true power comes from connection rather than control, from trust rather than fear. The observation resonated deeply with Hattie. My father never understood that distinction. He maintained control through deception until it destroyed him, while we built truth between us from the beginning, Duke noted, even when that truth was complicated. Outside, church bells began to toll, announcing midnight's arrival and Christmas Day's birth. Duke rose, extending his hand to his wife. Together they moved to the window, watching snow transform Paris into a glistening wonderland. 2 years ago tonight, we stood in Saint-Germain, while Knox offered peace, Duke recalled. Everything changed in that moment. Everything changed the moment I stepped off that train, Hattie corrected gently. We just didn't recognize it immediately. Duke turned her to face him, his expression more open than anyone beyond these private moments would ever witness. Merry Christmas, Hattie Romano. Merry Christmas, Duke, she replied, rising on tiptoes to meet his kiss. As the bells continued their joyful proclamation, snow fell softly beyond the windows of the home they'd created. The Southern belle who had fled scandal, and the Mafia Millionaire who had inherited an empire, had forged something neither could have built alone. A life that balanced shadow and light, power and love, ambition and family. The morning train that had brought Hattie to Paris had delivered far more than a financial consultant to Duke Romano. It had brought him the partner who would help transform his world from one ruled by fear to one governed by mutual respect, from isolation to connection, from mere survival to truly living. And in that transformation lay the greatest power of all, the power of choosing love despite danger, trust despite risk, and partnership above all else.